Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Demo Days, the show where we ask vendors tough questions while they demo their products for us. I'm your host, Steve Taylor. Today I'm joined by Megan Killion from MKC Agency. Megan, how you doing?
Great, Steve. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you are here. So, uh, I feel like you are, I don't know, I feel like you're new to the channel, but that's only because you're new to me. It doesn't mean you're new to the channel, right? So if you could give me just a brief, who are you? What is MKC Agency? What do you guys do?
Sure. So, I guess you could say we're sort of new to the channel from the vendor side. If we think about the MSP industry being 25, 30 years old, um, we have been an agency for around 4 years now. I was a consultant long before that, and I've been in B2B tech sales for 15 years. That's probably low. It's more than that now, but let's not talk about it. And I've worked for 3 different MSPs directly, worked fractionally for quite a few MSPs now. Was always kind of in the telco space, infrastructure, cybersecurity. So still kind of in that channel ecosystem my entire career. Um, in terms of MKC and what we do, when we started as an agency, like many companies out there, we went broad and we just did B2B tech sales and marketing. And we really tried to be a one-stop shop, outsource it all to us company. For any of you that have ever read The Pumpkin Plan, we sort of did that. And we learned that MSPs are who we really love to work with. They may not always have the biggest budgets, but most MSP owners are very enthusiastic about breathing life into their business and bringing in more revenue. And they're really grateful when you can do that for them. And our agency was founded on this principle of proving that ethical sales and marketing tactics are just as scalable as those old traditional methods. You don't have to lie to acquire customers. You can be who you are. And as we endeavor to do that, what we found was that MSPs were the best partners for us, because when I help an MSP bring in a new $1 million a year contract, it's life-changing, not just for the owner, but for every single employee. They will hire more people. They will put that money back into their local communities. In the past, I've closed, $50 million deals that the result of which was I got a pat on the head from my VP of sales who took credit for my deal. And then my CEO went and bought his third private jet.
Mm.
And I never wanted to do that again. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we niched down into MSPs and their channel partners. So today, 80 to 90% of our clientele, managed service providers, and the rest is made up of like B2B telcos, cybersecurity, infrastructure companies that they would typically partner with. So we're kind of all in that ecosystem now.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we help MSPs get more revenue. We do that through coaching and consulting, strategy, as well as lead generation and content marketing.
That's a really interesting approach. So it's if I recall correctly, based on what very little research I've done on your agency, because I can't research all my guests, can I? Yes, I could.
If that's your full-time job.
Kind of is. So if I recall correctly, you do like sales training, sales coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got the marketing campaign like you'll build and manage and execute a marketing strategy, marketing campaign for MSPs, and then don't you also help with some of like the tools?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we help them navigate the wide variety of tools out there. And I know MSP owners love to buy tools and then never use them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say like 8 out of 10 MSPs that I walk into, they've got tools in their stack that they don't even understand what they do, especially on the sales and marketing side. So we kind of help them figure out what they actually need, what their budget is for something like that. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of Cadillacs out there when it comes to sales and marketing. The HubSpots, the Zoom Infos, the Gongs. Those are great tools. I have nothing bad to say about them on the tool front. They're intuitive. They do great work. The data is good. They have high uptime. But they're multi-$1,000 investments. And most MSPs don't have an internal sales and marketing team dedicated to working that engine to make it pay off. So we typically go out and help MSPs find less expensive tools that we can help them leverage to get similar results.
Okay. And how would you say your agency is different from some of the traditional agencies and just other organizations that MSPs are probably familiar with?
For one, we lean a lot more towards custom than templated or customizable content. Well, we do have some sort of done with you, do it yourself options for people that don't have the budget to go all in. We really believe that your unique value is unique. It's in your core values, your vision, your why, your people, how you do things. And in particular, digging a little bit deeper and understanding what parts of the wide swath of managed services you do really well and leading with that. And so if you just go out and you spin up a website and it looks exactly like your competitor that's 2 towns away, you're not doing a good job of differentiating yourself, especially in a market that is increasingly crowded. So the biggest thing I would say is that almost everything we do is custom. The second piece, I think, is that I really am a consultant at heart. My title is chief consultant. And pretty much everything we do starts with strategy. It starts with understanding where you are and where you want to go and building something within your budget that can get you there. And the other one that I hear a lot is a huge differentiator from other agencies is that we let you keep all your data. So regardless of like what tooling we build out for you, you should own that. And you should keep that data at the end of our relationship so you can continue to work it. It's really common in the agency space for, especially in MSP agencies, for them to build you a system in something you don't know how to use. And then when you end your contract, everything that's been done in there is lost to you. So most of the time, your initial contract with an agency will be somewhere from like 3 to 12 months. Marketing takes a long time to work. You may not see actual results in that time, like the return on investment may not be there, but the beginning is. So if you toss the baby out with the bathwater and you don't have all the leads that have answered forms, that have engaged with you on your social media, that you've called, you don't have the notes from an SDR that's been calling them, that money was truly thrown away. Mm-hmm. With us, we have some guarantees, depending what type of plan you're in, that you're actually going to get meetings. And in some cases, we even guarantee you that you'll open up opportunities. But if we end our relationship and we're not continuing, you're still going to keep all of that information. And we do an offboarding where we go over what's in there and say, hey, look, this is what we think is hot and you should stay on it. This is all kind of the warm stuff. And these things are cold and you can continue to work them or not. So we continue to really support them regardless of whether they're staying with us. Most likely outcome is they're going to hire for sales and marketing internally. We want to like tie it up in a bow and hand it off to the new team so that they can hit the ground running.
Very cool. And one of the things that I saw stressed on your website is that you focus on ethical marketing. Mm-hmm. So I think we as adults understand what the definition of ethical is and what the definition of marketing is.
People will disagree on both of those, though.
What was that?
People will disagree on both of those, though. So
sure, but I think even more people will disagree on what is considered ethical marketing. Mm-hmm. So why don't you give me your definition of what ethical marketing is? And if you could give me a few examples of things that, I don't know if it's things that you do or things that other companies do that you don't do, however you want to position that.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to talk badly about anybody else. People do the things they do for a reason.
We don't have to name names. I'm just looking for examples.
But the biggest things are, and to be fair, like I come from big tech for a lot of my career. Big money, large contract value, CDN in particular, but also telcos and SaaS companies. In that space in particular, there's a lot of unethical marketing practices. So things like skewing your Sodexis reports, which is a third-party reporting system on like content delivery. It tests, ping, throughput, all kinds of things. Depends what type of file you're trying to deliver, how important each of those things are. And a lot of CDNs would go in, run a Sodexis report, and manipulate the data until it looked good, and then say that that was their performance all the time. So they'd look at like the best day in the whole year, delivering a very specific type of file that was super easy for them in a region where they have really good performance, and be like, this is our global performance, right?
Gotcha.
That's one way that you can be unethical, right? I also worked with a company as part of 5G rollout, and there was a lot of concerning initial reporting around the impact of 5G, environmentally, on our health, and
like mind control.
Not quite there. More so just they weren't, at the time that it launched, they were not sure how safe it was.
Really?
But everything was pushed through anyways. And we were all asked to sign additional NDAs to not disclose the details around that. That was my last day. I left. I didn't sign it. At the time, I was making $300,000 a year base.
That's a nice salary.
But there's no amount of money for me that makes up for pushing through a product that isn't ready, that isn't safe, and lying to people. A non, like from my personal experience example is like, I don't know if you've ever seen the ads for Hooked on Phonics.
Yeah. It worked for me.
It actually worked for me too. I couldn't read until first grade. And then I had a college reading level in 5th grade. But Hooked on Phonics has this like guarantee that your kid will jump this amount in a certain amount of time. But there's no follow through on that guarantee, right? It doesn't actually, there's nothing that happens with the guarantee if it doesn't happen. And they use stats that are heavily manipulated, like 100% of the time, kids learn this way. And it's just untrue, right? I actually wrote an article about that being unethical marketing like a really long time ago when I was first diving into really defining this concept of ethical marketing for myself and for others. And ultimately, what ethical marketing is all about is it's about truly capturing what makes you unique and putting that out there. And instead of trying to run away from the truth, embracing it. In marketing, there's always going to be this kind of concept of the spin, right? Putting glitter on a turd. So it's okay to use language that makes things sound good, right? That's the whole concept of like copywriting and content and design functionality, and marketing inherently leverages behavioral psychology to influence what people do. That's the job. It's okay. We can embrace that. But let's not directly lie about things, especially things that can be harmful. So I think the first question you have to ask yourself is this true? And then the second is putting this out in the world going to harm anybody, right? So like an example is you're a really small MSP. You're 2 people. It's one-man shop, and then you've got an admin. You could go spin up a whole bunch of fake LinkedIn profiles and make your business look bigger than it is, and put pictures on your website generated by AI that make you look like a big MSP and say, we have 20, 25 people. Or you could lean in and say, I'm the one engineer here, and then I have some administrative assistants. Because of that, you get me on every ticket. And I have this amount of experience. You're never going to get a T1 guy who doesn't know what he's talking about. And we're agile, and I will appreciate you because I only have this many clients, and you're going to be mid-size or large for me, instead of you being a tiny drop in the bucket at a major MSP where the CEO doesn't even know your name. Just lean in. You're taking something that could be perceived as a weakness and making it your unique value proposition. And when you do that, especially when you put it out there in marketing, when you embrace radical transparency, when you are authentic, you filter out the bad actors by the nature of being who you are. In my own example, I don't want to do business with chauvinistic or misogynistic people. I don't want to do business with people who can't deal with someone who's disabled. I don't want to do business with people who are bigoted and hateful towards the LGBTQIA community. So I put that stuff out there, right? I've got purple hair, and I talk about the fact that I'm bisexual. I talk about the fact that I'm autistic. And if people don't like that, then they don't need to come and buy from me. Especially when we are in a service-based industry. The worst thing that can happen is you hide who you are behind this screen. And eventually, you're in a service-based industry, you're going to integrate, you're going to deal with people. The screen is going to be pulled back. Do you really want to trick a client into doing business with you, and then they hate you and they're a miserable client because they're not getting what they wanted and you aren't what they expected? That's a horrible experience. You're still going to have to service them. And even if they cancel, you're going to have to do an offboarding. MSP services aren't turn off, turn on. It's an integrated service. We're dealing with a company's entire business infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those ethics, they feed your business. So not only is it better from an ethical point of view, right? That you can sleep better at night, but also it's just better for your business, especially as we're moving into a period of time where millennials are the primary business decision makers. They make decisions. Yeah, well, I'm a millennial. We're not babies anymore.
So am I.
But I think it's 64 to 70%, depending where you check, of business decision makers are millennials. And the way they make decisions is different. And one of the key factors in their decision making is shared values and their perception on the sustainability and ethics of your business. They want to buy from people who have an ethical supply chain. They want you to have sustainable business practices, and they want to feel like you share their values. This whole concept of voting with your wallet is a very millennial thing.
Mm-hmm.
And with that in mind, it does take a little bit of time and effort to sit down and ask yourself who you are and what you stand for. But that marketing is extremely effective, paired with knowing your shit. Because you can't just rest on your laurels and be like, I'm just really nice, and that's why you should buy managed services from me, because we are nice people. Yeah, we want our tech to be nice.
And gosh darn it, people like me.
Yeah, but also you have to know how to do your job too.
Mm-hmm.
So be good at it and let people know you're good at it and tell them who you are and just embrace it. I think also for many of us, we grew up in a time when there was just a lot of shame around being who you are. And I think that has impacted how many people run their businesses. And so part of ethical marketing, part of radical transparency is also coming to terms with who you are and learning to love that person so that you can put it out in the world and be confident.
All right. So we have a lot of comments, and
I'm going to say they're almost all from Dean. We'll start with an easy one. Why is everything so matchy and mint green?
Branding, Dean, like you haven't heard of it?
Yeah.
The MKC Agency brand is teal and purple. And I wish I could say that like I really thought about the psychology of color when I did that. They're just my favorite colors. But companies like Immybot and Huntress get a lot of screen time from me because they share my branding. These
All
glasses
right.
say MKC Agency on the side.
That's neat. And how big should my MSP? No. How big should I be to spend money on an external marketing resource? I'm going to say at least 250 pounds, 6 foot tall.
It's funny because I'm actually working on a document around this right now, which is marketing plans for any size company.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the answer is any size, but how you define an external marketing resource and how much you spend. So like, let's say you have $500 a month to put into budget. If you don't have $500 a month to market yourself, I don't know how you're going to grow. But let's say you only have 500, then the expectation should be that like you as the owner are going to have to do some of the labor. You're going to have to do the strategy yourself. You're going to have to give whoever's doing the work a lot of guidance, but you can hire people off of Fiverr, off Upwork. You can use tools like Verbio. There's a new one on the market called Siona for kind of creating content. So combination of like leveraging AI and potentially doing some offshore labor or finding, like an inexpensive intern, whatever. You can absolutely spend money with an external marketing resource at any size, but you have to find one that's willing to work with your budget.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, there's resources on the internet that will basically say the general recommendation is that MSPs should spend between 5 to 8% of their revenue on marketing. But for like new and growing companies, the recommendation is higher. They'll actually say like 20% of the gross revenue should be allocated to marketing. So what have you seen in the past? Obviously, I'm sure it's kind of like all over the place, but have you seen success for the MSP doing 5 to 8%? Have you seen a lot of success for the MSPs doing 20?
Yeah, I think so. One, you have to define what success is, and that should be done before you start spending money. What does success look like for you?
What is this, planning?
Is it, I want new revenue in 6 months? Or is it, I want to systematically grow my MSP year over year with inbound leads forever, and I'm okay if that takes longer to build?
Okay, can it be both?
Yes, it can be both. It can be a combined strategy. What we do during like an intake is we're going to prioritize your goals so that we can tell you where your money should go, right? If you want immediate results, then you need to put money into sales resources. If you want to build a lasting brand, then that's much more of a marketing resource. And the budget, right? I have seen companies be successful at 5%. I've seen companies be unsuccessful at 30%. So this concept of like, it's all about how much money you spend is just garbage. Throw it away. What impacts your success is the strategy you put in place, the plan that you create, whether you do it in-house or you bring in somebody like me to help you consult on it, and whether or not you follow through with the plan, test results, and adapt to what's happening in the market. If you do those things, you're going to be successful. If you think that, revenue acquisition is something you can just throw money at and it'll be handled, it really does not matter how much money you spend. If you're not willing to put in the work to define a strategy, put together a plan, and make sure that's deployed on, you're probably not going to get results. Because even if you give a really reputable agency 15 grand a month, if you're not checking up on that and making sure it's spent appropriately and that the results are coming, you're probably not going to get results.
I like that. How do you identify after the sale when a client is a bad fit for both of your core values? I typically identify as a cactus because I'm a prick.
What do?
What
Um,
do?
so hopefully you're identifying this before the end of the sale. I have a matrix for this that I've built for a couple of companies and for myself. It has a lot of proprietary data, so I can't just like share it, but I can give everybody kind of an idea of what it looks like, which is for every prospect that you're working, you should be grading them on a variety of factors, particularly if you've had a lot of problems in the past with bringing on bad clients. So think about the things that have impacted what made a client bad for you. So like on ours is like, do people pay their bills on time? One scale of 1 to 10, like what were their red flags during the sales process, and kind of we notate what they were. We take each of our core values and rate them 1 to 5 on the alignment there. We ask ourselves if we think they'll be fun to work with. Do they respect what we do? Do they understand a reasonable timeline? Can they make referrals for us? So like, would a testimonial from them have impact towards our overall goal? How in our ICP are they? So we basically combine our ICP scorecard with our kind of like core value scorecard, and it spits out a number at the end. And we sort of have this threshold of like, if it's below this, then like, stop. If it's above this, it's fine. And if it's in the middle, let's talk about whether we want them to be a client. When it happens after the sale closes, things get complicated, and it depends a lot on what your contract says. So MKC has a code of conduct that is written into all of our contracts. You have to initial that you read it and understand it. And I actually have one pulled up over here. But it says that you've read and reviewed our code of conduct, and you agree that more than 3 violations can result in a cease of services without any refund. And that's kind of how we protect ourselves. And in our code of conduct, we have things that are basically like, you can't abuse my employees. Don't swear at them. You can swear with them if you want. No yelling at them. No demeaning people. Respect our working hours. Collaborate with us towards your goals. That type of stuff. The other thing that we put in place that really protects us is we have a client success roadmap that is delivered to the client either before the sale closes or immediately upon signature. It's sent with their welcome letter. That is essentially this like checklist of things we're going to need from you and when we're going to need them by to deploy everything on time. And that has to be done to qualify for all of our guarantees. So as long as you're doing everything on the roadmap, then we guarantee you a certain level of deliverables. If you're not doing that, then we say like, you might be shit out of luck on what we can accomplish for you, because we can't get a hold of you. You're not coming to your account management meetings. You don't have a vision. You haven't given us core values or a unique value prop. We know you're a managed service provider, but what does that mean to you? So I would say that the best thing to do is proactively protect yourself. But when shit goes sideways later, and it has happened to us, that's why we're so tight on these things now, is kind of, you do the best you can. Confront the client, ask them to fix things. If that doesn't work, and like, let's be honest, bad clients tend to just get really argumentative when we confront them, then just say goodbye. Try to make it as amicable of a separation as possible. Protect yourself, protect your data, get them off you as fast as you can. And worst case scenario, there's always mitigation and litigation.
Those are my 2 favorite words. Just kidding.
Litigation is my least favorite word, but it goes hand in hand with dispute. I don't like those ones.
I don't like confrontation either.
Not a big fan.
Yeah, not a fan. I like drama. I just don't like being involved in it.
To be a part of it. No, it's great when it's happening to other people, but when it's happening to me, I don't sleep for weeks.
Right. That's exactly.
Especially because I tend to internalize things. And so I'm always like, well, what did I do wrong? Dean's usually my therapist that I go to, and he's like, you work with MSPs, Megan. Some of them are jerks.
Yeah. I think that can be said about any industry though. Like people
I don't know if you've ever seen the like narcissistic personality disorder index, but it's like US presidents, business owners.
Yeah.
Ranking us as how narcissistic we are. So there's always going to be some friction when you're in the business world, you're selling to owners. People take pride in their work. It's hard to get somebody to listen who thinks that they're right. It's par for the course. You learn to deal with it. You learn to navigate it. You learn to protect yourself. And I think it's really important to just know what your non-negotiables are in terms of your own behavior. We cannot control other people, but we can control ourselves and we can act with integrity.
Yeah. All right. So this is demo days. So typically,
we're going to demo something.
Typically, we demo something. Now you are a marketing agency, so you don't have like a product you're showing us. You're not trying to sell us a widget. You're going to show us, I believe, just more like processes around what you do, and then maybe some fun toys if we can fit it all in.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you guys what managed Apollo sequences look like with us. And if we've got time, I'll kind of show you around a little bit how we build those in the Outbound OS program that we use to build this stuff. And then hopefully there'll be some questions, because I was promised that I was going to be peppered with difficult questions. And so far they've been really easy.
I mean, we'll get there.
Like, I'm going to blindside you at the end, Megan.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't want to make you look bad at the beginning.
Let's see if I can remember how to do this without making a fool of myself.
I told you to just leave it up.
I know, you really did. So hopefully everybody can see what is currently an Apollo sequence.
Azure sunsets right back healthcare.
Yes. So this sequence is built on a specific trigger. For those of you that do not know, Right Back 2.0 is being sunset, I believe, July 1st. And anybody that's not ready for that is going to have problems with their instances.
So this is going to sound really bad, but I don't know what right back is.
To be honest, I had to do a lot of research around this when we first got the sunset notification for the client. This particular client and all the client data has been removed from it. And the reason I'm demoing this one is because it's not super proprietary to like any MSP that we work with. But the Right Back V2 impacts like identity access management and your Azure setup. I had to use ChatGPT to research it, if I'm completely honest, because I, despite having an infrastructure background, didn't know what it was influencing. And it's kind of like a small subsection of users that are going to be influenced by this. But it's one of those things that if you're not in the know and you're not monitoring it, you may not even know it's being sunset. So what we do is we set up these A/B tests. And for anybody that's not familiar with A/B testing, it's just a way of figuring out what's working and what's not working so that you can toggle off the things that aren't working to give more focus to the things that are.
Yeah.
This particular sequence is built on 2 plays. So it's fully automated. And then when someone shows any amount of interest, like they're opening multiple emails or clicking links, then we assign it to a different place where manual tasks happen. So the initial email, something like this. And because these emails are going to IT directors, we're starting with, as you're likely aware, because we know we want to play into the fact that they are experts. And we're offering a 12-minute consultation, which 12 minutes is just a pattern interrupt. People are used to hearing 15, 20, 30 minutes. And this is very, very niche. The more focused you can get on specific triggers, the more focused messaging you can get. The actual live sequence of this that's being used for our client has a 56% open rate and a 12% reply rate. That's very high for those that don't know the like industry standards. And then we're A/B testing against the other options. So this is like a slightly shorter email. And you'll see to the left here, I'm using this tool called Lavender, which grades your emails based on their data from millions of emails and tells you how good it is.
And by good, you mean how likely it is to garner success. Whatever the success is.
Yeah, so they are tracking emails across so many different people and so many different companies and so many different buyer personas to understand what increases reply rates, what increases meeting set rates. And so they have a ton of data that, you know, your own data is always the best, but how many MSPs are really truly tracking their data on this type of stuff? Not many. So I would highly recommend looking at Lavender, even if you're not going to buy the tool, just looking at their stats. Some of that's integrated into our Outbound OS doc as well. So then the next step is obviously a follow-up a couple of days later. Overall, replies perform better than new threads, especially as relates to reply rates. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a positive reply, but when you nest your replies, people realize that like you're going to keep talking to them. It also feels more natural than getting a new email, because that's what you do, right? If you were an actual salesperson following up with a prospect, you would go reply to your previous email. You wouldn't start a whole new email. But we do A/B test with a new subject line, in part because we want to know how subject lines are working. Most of the data will tell you want like a 1 to 5 word subject line. But what I will tell you is that you want to match internal communication methodology. So you want your subject line to read like it came from someone inside the org or their customer/client so that they will open it. But then you have to follow through in the context of the email. So you can't just open with something like, like important review due, and then not have the context be relevant. You'll notice that until this third email, I really didn't say anything about us. In cold email, it's really, really important to focus on the prospect first. I think we're all inundated with emails that are all about what someone can do for us before they even figure out if we have a need. So the beginning of your sequence or your cold emails, you should always be starting with something about them. And only as you get later into a sequence should you transition to explaining why they should talk to you or buy from you. If you have social proof, you should use it as much as you can. This particular client that we built this for has very little proof because they were a subcontractor for another company for a really long time. So most of their social proof they can't use. Now you'll notice up here on the right, we've got this thing that says plays. Plays is one of the coolest features of Apollo. A lot of other sales software has this feature. It might be called something else, but like if you're familiar with like a Lucia, a ZoomInfo, a Seamless, they're all going to be like similar tools that have similar features, and they should have something like this in their environment. And what a play is it's just an automation, right? So you see this one says that we're adding contacts. So if we go look at the plays related to the sequence, there's 2 of them. The first one is how we're adding contacts to the sequence. And what you can see is we've set it up so that every day it is going to add 10 contacts, and it's only going to add them once, and it's going to do it based on these criteria, right? It's probably hard to see all of that in the current view, so we'll open. There's a ton of features that you can and filters you can look for in a tool like Apollo. A tool like ZoomInfo is going to be even better because they acquired Datanyze back in the day, and they have some of the best like data on the planet. Anybody that's integrating with Bombora is going to have decent buyer intent data. But for this one, we're grabbing email statuses, and anytime you're working in any tool, if you're going to automate outreach, please, for the love of all that is holy, verify your emails first, or you will tank your email deliverability so fast you will never get out of spam jail until you spin up a new domain. Then we're looking at some very specific job titles. For this use case, I didn't search by the specific job titles. I added in the departments and management levels. So these titles that you see here are subsets of like 2 or 3 different departments. Oops, I just deleted it instead of what I meant to do. That's okay. And then I'm looking at manager, director, head, and VP in those. So the departments were like IT, engineering, and operations, but I opened those up and subset inside of it the ones that were relevant to us. And then the location, the very first sequence was just US based, but we narrowed in a little bit geographically. And then we're looking at larger companies. Small businesses are highly unlikely to be using Writeback V2. This is the ICP we're working in. So like health, medical, hospital, biotech, basically people dealing with HIPAA compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're looking at intent topics, right? So they have some interest in what we do. If I were to remove the intent scores, the results over here would explode. But we don't want to hit everybody. We want to hit people the most likely to buy from us. So that's kind of the filters we're using to pull into this sequence, right?
So you said the intent scores, you're pulling in just the people that you think are likely to buy. Mm-hmm. So you've got low, medium, and high. Wouldn't you want to get rid of low? Or is there something below low?
There's zero.
Okay.
So this is somebody that's showing some level of intent. And depending on the topic, so like for anybody that wants to really nerd out about intent data, when you go into Apollo and you look at the intent topics, it tells you how it's pulling that data. So some of these are Bombora intent signals, but others are going to be lower levels of intent because they're just doing it from like web scraping or browsing, which is not as effective. The last and final step is for it to add the contacts to the specific sequence and send from whatever user you want. Apollo does have the ability to rotate mailboxes if you've got, a couple different domains set up for somebody. And so that's the play going in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we also have a play coming out. So this one is when an email is opened, it should say specifically from this sequence. And the email sender is this person. It's going to actually re-enroll that contact every 2 weeks. And then we're setting additional parameters, right? Because I don't just want to call everybody who opens any email. I think we all kind of know that a good spam filter will open all your emails. Tell everyone you're interested. So we're looking at people that have opened at least 3 times from this sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just creating a contact task, which is to call them. Now, there are other things we can do and have done. Like you can say, add it to a contact list, which you could then export and put into some other type of like nurturing campaign you have someplace else. You could add them to another sequence. So it's very common for us to set up an automated sequence and then a manual sequence and then have, whatever triggers we want to set in the sequence, like a link is clicked or they're opening a certain number of times, whatever. We add them to a manual sequence that says something like call them, send them a manual email, and connect with them on LinkedIn and send them a message on LinkedIn. Or do a research step, what have you. It's all kind of developed based on the person who's going to be managing it, their bandwidth. So a lot of times MSP owners come to us for stuff like this because they're not ready to like hire and manage an SDR. They want to be doing it themselves, but they can't call, 500 companies a week. So we're doing some automation to figure out who the warm leads are, and then they can just call them. And then just to give you an idea of kind of what this looks like, I had to filter out all my client stuff. So we're only looking at MKC things. But once you've been working something for a while, go ahead.
Real quick, are the reply rates accounting for the automatic replies that come in?
No. Apollo filters those out. Lots of platforms don't, but Apollo does.
Cool.
So if you're looking at we've got 7 different MKC sequences here. These are all ones that are still running. So that means they don't suck too bad. For whatever reason, it's not showing reply in this dashboard, which is weird. But you can see the open rates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this one has a 57% open rate. Why? I couldn't tell you. Probably because it was built more recently. Then this is actually a really specific one that we expected to be much higher, but it's got a lower open rate. But it's also not been running for that long. Then we look at the small business website one. I think this sequence booked us 12 meetings. But you can kind of see here how you could easily pull up and compare multiple sequences and turn one off if it's not working. Then we could look inside of one. Let's look at this one that's performing well because I'm baffled. Yes. This is sort of my OG template for outreach to any type of company that I just optimized a little bit. So it doesn't have a ton of A/B tests because it was already pretty proven, but it's a very low pressure sequence, which is probably why it performs decently well. I think this is probably the one that is most actively used by myself and my team and has the most variables that we could look at. So you can see just how many tests we've run through here. And someone is always coming in here and kind of toggling them on and off. And that's what sort of the benefit of being in a managed sequence with us over just doing it yourself is having somebody constantly come in and look at it and tweak things. So we can look at, something that's getting a high open rate but a low reply rate. You can come right in and you can clone it. And then edit it up, change the text inside the email, but keep the subject line the same because the subject line's performing. That's why it's getting opened. But something in the body isn't performing because you're not getting any replies. And then you can look at things that do have high replies and see if you can up the opens with a new subject line, right? So then you could come in and clone something like this and be like, well, I'm getting a 2% reply rate, but it's only a 17% open. So how could I change that subject line to get more opens to therefore get more replies? Just FYI, so you guys know how it works. It marks an email as interested when it detects a meeting. And we do not use Apollo's email scheduling, their meeting scheduling tool. So it doesn't always capture ours, because we're not using their tool for scheduling. We use spots.
So it always looks like nobody's ever interested.
I mean, it catches some of them because it's integrated with some people on the team's calendars. So it'll catch it from their calendar, but it definitely doesn't capture them all. And there's a lot of cool reporting you can do on the back end to figure out which steps of your sequence are performing the best, as well as which sequences are performing the best, and just toggle things on and off. Now, I want to be really, really clear that I don't think that automated outreach outperforms one-to-one custom outreach. You're going to get the best reply rates, And the best likelihood of opening up a new opportunity, if you are doing custom work, meaning that like you're doing a little bit of research, 3 minutes is fine. And then writing them a custom message and then like manually assigning yourself a task to follow up. That is what, if you have full-time salespeople, they should be doing that more than leaning on automation. They should only be leaning on automation for like the lowest hanging fruit. In fact, we kind of cover that under sequences in our Outbound OS doc. We talk about this concept of tiering. I think we all know that not all prospects are created equally. Mm-hmm. So this concept of tiering is figuring out who your best prospects are. They should get like almost exclusively manual effort for you. So something like building a Dream 100 or Dream 250, those prospects should be getting some research, and then they should get personalized email, manual calls, and you should be connecting with them and engaging with them on social.
That sounds like real work, though.
It is real work. I know that the average MSP might not want to like acknowledge it, but salespeople actually do work hard. Mm-hmm. Tier 2 is like your okay prospects. We still want to play a little bit of a numbers game here. So an email first approach, we'll call the prospects that open the emails, right? What we were kind of talking about is more my worst prospects, which is automate the email entirely. Don't really put any personalization in. And then only call them if like they're showing a lot of intent. And we have sequences for all these different things, and we can show you, you know, how those sequences should break down for each of them. But the biggest thing is really just understanding this concept that while sales is a numbers game, there are things you can do to make those numbers better. And first and foremost, it's just don't treat accounts like they're equal. There's a difference between a 5-person like small construction company that's not in your ICP and, you know, a 50-person law firm and that's your ICP. You want to focus your time where it's going to matter the most. And there's some stats in here that are kind of important to know, especially if you're thinking about hiring for sales or if you have a salesperson that you're ready to scream at. Mm-hmm. 93 to 96% of prospects never pick up our calls. 2/3 of them never even see the emails that we send them. And 99% of prospects never reply to the emails that we send them. And that's not we as in me, my, or you, your. That's overall from like the Bridge Group and Orem, who have huge sample sizes.
So it sounds like the problem is the prospect.
You're right, Steve. It's buyers. They're the problem. Where are we at for time?
We got like 5 minutes left. Dean, are you still watching and listening?
Yeah,
because I still have a question of yours I got to go over at the end. All right. So we got a few minutes left. Man. All right. So we talked about ethical marketing.
We did.
We talked about, I'm just looking through my questions. Mm-hmm. We talked about how you are staying maybe not ahead of the curve, but you're following the curve when it comes to industry trends, emerging technologies, that type of stuff. When it comes to marketing, you talked about a little bit about how to understand an MSP's unique value proposition and translating it into compelling marketing and sales messaging. And the example you gave, which I was really impressed by, was the one-person MSP, where you lean into it instead of make it look like you got 25 employees.
Yeah, why are you ashamed of your business?
It's not that I'm ashamed. It's, never mind. I don't have anything appropriate to say.
I mean, I think like Dean talks about it, right? Where he says trunk slayer instead of trunk slammer.
Yeah.
And it's just this, like, there's nothing wrong with your business structure. And I mean, there are problems with some business structures, but there's nothing wrong with being a one-man shop. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, like, can you offer a high level of service as a one-man shop? Great. Do that forever. Have no overhead. Pay yourself more money with every client you bring on. Great.
Yeah. So, when, since it's marketing, we don't have to worry about if you are able to sign a BAA, if you're HIPAA compliant. None of that matters because you are not touching our client's data. You're touching my data, and if that, you're only touching my marketing data.
Yeah, we usually don't, like, we'll help you integrate with your PSA or your RMM tool to your CRM, but we don't work in it. So we're just touching like your CRM and whatever data is in that.
So, how would you say your pricing model compares to some of your competitors? And I think one of the things we talked about before we went live is you don't really have a true competitor because there's some guys that do one piece of what you do. There's some guys that do another piece of what you do, and you've got like 4 or 5 I don't know, business sectors of things that you do, right? So there's not any MSP focused channel marketing agencies that do all of what you do.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that make it hard for me to say like we have a true one-to-one competitor that does everything. And a big piece of that is that like I have fractional CRO plans. And in those, I'm working with many of my competitors. And in a very proactive, I want them to succeed because if they succeed, I succeed. And so I give them a lot of my own strategic stuff to help them support the client. And for me, because of the basis of why I built a business, I could make a lot more money doing other things and be less stressed out. And so could most managed service providers, might I add. Agencies, super stressful. MSP, super stressful.
Yep.
Real estate market, a lot more money in it. You could rent out dumpsters, a lot of money, real passive income, build out vending machines. There's a million ways to make money. The reason we do what we do is because of our desire to make impact. And so for me, I don't need to be the reason that the MSP wins. I just want them to win because I know that when MSPs grow their revenue, they improve their communities. And that's really what I'm after is when you look at big tech, there's just this huge gap between like the people making multi-six figures in cushy job roles and all the people who desperately want to break into it, but they can't, especially if they're marginalized in any way. And so for me, creating like a pipeline of talent where we're pulling from marginalized communities and peoples, giving them the training and support they need to succeed, and then either they're staying with us or they're getting placed somewhere else, that has real impact in the lives of those people and in their communities. And we just multiply that when we have MSPs doing well, because the average MSP does the same thing, right? They're not like, you have to have a BA in cybersecurity or computer science to work for us. They're like, you just graduated from high school and you don't want to go to college. You want to work help desk for a little bit and you can learn T1. And it creates an ecosystem that sustains our communities. And for me, like that is so much more important. And so when we talk about, like competition, like I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I want us all to succeed. And there are more than enough struggling MSPs to sustain probably 4 times the amount of like revenue consultants and agencies in the space right now.
Well, we have one last question to go over.
Is it from Dean?
It is from Dean.
Great.
He said, if we guess the code to that safe, can we have what's inside? Dean, I hate to break it to you, but That safe is where we lock up the electronics at night. So
To keep your kids from playing video games all night long.
uh-huh.
Yeah, we used to have like a clear one that we kept on the table that everybody's phones got put in timeout in.
I used to have so I had this this old entertainment center thing that my mom bought when I was like 9. All right. So it had like glass doors and very, very like wooden, very, very 1988 looking, and the the big part with the shelves and all that for like all the entertainment stuff, like the stereo and the tape deck and the CD player and all that, that we got rid of, but we kept the side piece that was designed to hold VHS tapes. So we kept that, dating myself, right? And we were using that because it had a locking door. We were using that to keep everything in. Well, one of my kids,
Just ripped it open.
who shall remain nameless, decided they really wanted their devices, so they got a screwdriver and they took the hinges off,
Sounds like kids, man.
and then they couldn't figure out how to put it back together.
They're like little junkies when it comes to electronics.
Yeah.
It's nuts how quickly they become addicted and how intensely.
Mm-hmm. So because they legit like broke our cabinet to the point where it was just easier and whatever. I didn't want to deal with it, so I just bought a safe. And let me tell you, there's no way they're getting in that.
We did last summer. We did just a summer free. Like I locked. We have a safe in our bedroom, and I locked it all up in the safe, and was like, no more electronics this summer. Like you can have the TV, and I turned off all the streaming services, so it was just like what's on the TV. I was like, live like a 90s kid this summer. Go outside.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Try it. Get melanoma.
Yeah. Well, Megan, this has been fun. I've learned some good stuff. If people are interested in learning more about MKC Agency, go to channelprogram.com. There might be some reviews up there already for MKC.
I have to drive them.
Yeah, there might be. There might not be. I don't know. Nobody knows until they go look.
It'll be a surprise for everybody.
Schrodinger's reviews.
Note to self: remember to send clients to Channel Program to review me.
Yeah, that's my new call to action, is to send people to your Channel Program profile. So, surprise.
Well, I mean, that's probably good that should be your call to action. You should get like a little link that goes across the bottom, tells them right where to
go. So here, hold on. Let's see. Link. HTTP www.channelprogram.com. Now, the real question is, do I have it visible like this?
That's
or
nice.
do I have it scrolling across the bottom like a ticker?
I don't know, but you should be sending them to this one, Steve.
Yeah, that's a lot to type.
It is. And our profile is definitely nowhere near as filled out as it needs to be. So
you'll get there.
We'll get there.
It's all good.
Makers kids go barefoot, guys.
All right. Well, Megan, this was great. Everyone in the comments, thank you for everything.
Yeah, thanks, Dean.
And
I appreciate
I'll take your kid's Game Boy. I'm cool with that. Get out of here, Dean. Go get your own Game Boy. All right. Take care, everybody.